and welcome to Coffee Break Blogging, where you'll learn to grow and monetize your blog in short, tactical installments you can use right away. Now here's the next episode in our series. Welcome back to another installment of Coffee Break Blogging, where this isn't just another podcast, it's a full course on building an online business based around your blog from scratch. My name again is David Risley, and if you want to catch up with us from the beginning, head on over to coffeebreakblogging.com to view the full archives. Okay, we are now going to move on to part 3 of our overall conversation on what we're calling conversion triggers. These are things that you can incorporate into how you present your offer in order to get people to take action. And these things about taking action, it's not just about our buying things. It's also a matter of opting into a list, opening an email, clicking on something, posting a comment, or really anything that you want them to do. These conversion triggers come into play in getting them to do it. Now, we've already talked about several different conversion triggers. So you can go back and listen to the last 2 episodes if you want to play catch up with us. But we're going to go ahead and move right into the next one here on part 3. And let's talk about anticipation. Building anticipation is definitely a strong conversion trigger. It's the idea of having something to look forward to and building what in many ways is really a potential energy. If you go back to the old, physics education, like back in high school or wherever you may have covered physics, and you learned about a thing called potential energy. You learned how if you, hold an object up in the air with your hand and keep it from falling, it has a potential energy because it wants to fall to the floor, and you're keeping it from happening. The moment you let go, it's gonna fall to the floor, and it's allowing that energy to discharge. Well, in a very similar way, you could do the same thing with your marketing, because you're building in a mental basis, really, but you're building this potential energy by building up participation. And the whole idea then is that you build up that anticipation up to a point where it wants to discharge itself, and it'll discharge the moment that you allow that energy to dissipate. It's almost like you're closing the circuit and allowing this potential energy that you built up with your audience to discharge. Okay. Now, the other thing too is that when it comes to our desire for pleasure and avoidance of pain, this is something that we talked about at the very beginning in part 1 of this conversion triggers series. We talked about how everybody's trying to enhance their quality of survival, and by moving toward pleasure in whatever context that they can. Well, one of the key sources of pleasure and happiness is the anticipation of that happiness. It's the idea of having something to look forward to. It reminds me of kids on Christmas morning. Well, obviously they look forward to Christmas morning, but the build up to Christmas morning is in many ways half the fun. And then it discharges itself on Christmas morning. And if you're anything like a lot of kids, you kind of get a little bored with your new gifts, right? Within the first few days, because that energy is discharged. A big part of it is the buildup. It's the anticipation. Kind of like when a new movie that everybody's excited about comes out. Half the fun is all the anticipation that goes before the movie is released. And then, of course, it's released and you go in to see it, and it's kind of like, okay, cool. I saw it now. And so that anticipation of pleasure is an important part of the overall happiness that we seek. Okay. And so how do you build this anticipation into your marketing? Well, the most obvious way to do that is using the launch process, orchestrating a product launch. You see this all the time when people are putting together a pre-launch campaign for something, either a brand new product, or maybe they are, it's something that they reopen periodically, like maybe once a year, and they will do a pre-launch campaign that can last a week or 2 weeks or what have you, with videos and emails and all this stuff. And the whole purpose of that is to build up anticipation. It's the idea of generating as much publicity as you can, as much word of mouth as you can for what you're about to release before you actually release it. And it's all because you're building this anticipation, this potential pleasure, so to speak, that when you then open it, it's going to help motivate people to take action on that in order to discharge this potential energy that you created. Okay, so that's the anticipation conversion trigger, something that you see lots of times out there with regard to product launches. The next conversion trigger I want to talk about is status, the idea of feeling like you're significant when compared to those around you. We all have, and admit it, even if you don't want to admit it publicly, we all have this personal innate desire to one-up those around us, to have them be impressed by us, to think that we're better, to think that we have better stuff. We want to impress other people. We want to have their respect, and there's an element that we want to show off. And it is just built in to most of us, with rare exception. If you're saying that is not even a remote part of you, you're probably fibbing yourself, okay? So it's this idea of status, and you see it in play all over the place if you actually know what you're looking for. The fashion industry has this in a big way, to the point where if you don't dress like the other person, you feel as if you're inferior. They were able to afford that item of clothing and you were not. What do you think the purpose of a Rolex is? It's to impress other people. That's the only purpose of a Rolex, because it doesn't tell time any better than anything else. I don't care what they say. It's a status symbol. Look at Apple products. It's a status symbol. Sure, it's a good phone. I happen to have an iPhone myself. But is it going to blow the socks off of an Android device? Most likely not. In fact, most Android devices will do more things than an iPhone. But it's a status symbol. And there's a lot of other conversion triggers in play with Apple products. There's a reason why we've mentioned Apple many times during this conversion trigger series. But status is definitely an element of it. When they release that new iPhone, one of the underlying reasons why you want that phone right off the bat is so that other people notice that you've got it. Okay? That's an element of status. If we go into the toy space, it's kind of funny, and I've got two young kids, so I see this. It reminds me back when I was in high school, the Beanie Baby thing was like a big deal. Now, I was personally never into it at all, but I had a guy that I knew who wanted to, for some reason, I don't know, he wanted to go out and collect Beanie Babies. And there were people who thought that they were worth something and would go and post them on eBay with these hiked up prices because they were positioned as collectibles. Like there was some kind of an economy behind them. Now, the thing is, the reason I remember this now is because my two kids are into Shopkins. I don't know if you've seen these things. I didn't even know what a Shopkin was until recently. Apparently, it's a stupid little plastic thing that it's like a piece of items that would be in a store, and they painted a couple of eyeballs on it. I don't really get it whatsoever, but apparently these Shopkins are a big deal. Kids are trading them at school or something. And there's actually this piece of paper that come with the Shopkins with this grid of all the available Shopkins, and they'll actually tell you if they're rare, if they're common, if they're quote unquote very rare. I mean, get that. The company that makes it and tries to sell it to you is telling you whether it's very rare or not. And of course, these kids, because that is now a status symbol for them, are now going out there and trading Shopkins, trying to get the very rare ones that they don't already have. It's a funny thing. Go even into the airline industry. What are the rewards points other than a sign of status? Sure, you get free flights and all that, but then they always give these tiered awards and these names, I don't know, gold members or something like that. That you got the different levels of American Express cards. All they are status symbols. Status symbols. It's a very important part of overall marketing. So you need to look at what you're doing. How can you give status to your offer? How could you build some element of status into what it is that you're delivering? Now, when it comes to, excuse me, even getting into the product to begin with, all right, I had to recover my voice there. One of the only times I've ever had to edit something out of this podcast, because I just lost my voice there with a cough. Anyway, I was going to say, how can you set status up with regard to the actual act of them buying? Well, can you provide an element of exclusivity to the product by limiting the amount of quantity, limiting the number of spots available? What about cost? Could you price the thing high so that those who get into it have some kind of a status over the people who didn't? And then the people that are on the outside are going to be like, man, what is it about that thing? Why are they paying so much? That's an element of status. There's also stuff that can go after the sale in terms of things that you can do with customer service to really make your customers feel special. If you're running a membership site, you can actually do things on your onboarding process that are designed to provide status to your members, and that can help keep them in the program. And so these are things that you want to think about with regard to your own offers and how you set things up. How can you build in a sense of status? Because it is a conversion trigger. All right, let's move to the next one. This one is probably not going to be any secret to you, and that is social proof. Okay, now this one most likely is not new to you. It's the idea of providing testimonials and things like that that show that others have gone before your prospect, made that decision, and were happy with it. See, at the end of the day, us human beings are social animals. And with rare exception, we tend to operate in packs. There are those people out there who are natural born leaders, but they are a minority. Most human beings are followers by nature. And so we have this safety in numbers mentality, many of us, okay? So with that in mind, if you can show that other people have made the decision that you want your prospect to make, and they're happy with it, they're glad that they did it, then that is very influential on your prospect. And third-party social proof is even better. It's one thing for you to come out there and say how great something is, or even to take a testimonial and put it on your site. But when you can provide the true appearance of a true third-party endorsement, using social media platforms is a great way to do that. I've seen people who take a screenshot of a tweet and they use that as a form of testimonial. Very easy thing to do, but also having that screenshot that clearly is Twitter or a Facebook post provides an element of third-party endorsement to the product, because generally you probably didn't ask those people to go out on social media and say that. They just kind of said it and you saw it and you took a screenshot, right? So those kinds of things are a way to make the believability of a testimonial a lot more real. Another thing is to go to the opinion leaders, the people who your audience respects, and see if you can line up it may not be a testimonial, it might just be a testament to you and your character, something like that. But the key there is to have people who your audience will recognize and will respect what they say. And so this really goes to the heart of really knowing your audience, knowing who they pay attention to other than you. Because if those people are seen saying good things about you, then that brings up your element of believability and trust with your prospect. So that's the element of social proof, a very simple and common conversion trigger. The last one we're going to talk about today is the reference point. This is the idea of, it comes down to this. People don't make a decision in a vacuum. They're going to make that decision, but framed around things that they're already familiar with. We tend to make decisions on an unknown by comparing it to the things that we do know. Okay, this is the way that human beings tick. It's kind of like our logical process. Now, you can use this in your marketing because we do judge the relative value or advantage of something by comparing to other things that we do have certainty on, okay? And so when you're judging the value of an offer, you're going to be thinking in terms of the other things that you've seen, maybe from competitors or what have you. These are the things that you know coming in. And you as the marketer can use those things to provide branch off points to give like a frame of reference to your offer, okay? Now, you could do this with pricing very easily. An example would be how you might equate your price to the price of a McDonald's Happy Meal or the price of a fancy Starbucks coffee. These are common everyday things that your audience is pretty much going to know what they generally cost. Perhaps it's something that they buy on a regular basis, and you just framed your offer in that context. If you say you could get all this for the cost of a fancy Starbucks coffee, if you're selling some little front end product or something like that, then they're thinking, well, hell, I buy coffee like every morning. I don't know. Maybe this is not that big of a deal. You're kind of putting it in that kind of perspective. I've also seen it many times with recurring monthly membership type programs where they'll have a silver membership that costs, some amount of money, and then they'll have a gold membership that has a lot more benefits, but the price is only incrementally higher than the silver. And you're providing that frame of reference. Your prospect might look at that and go, well, hell, just for a few bucks more, I get all that. And then guess what? They're going to upsell themselves into the gold membership. Okay. So this is the idea of providing those reference points. It works in a lot of different ways. It also works in branding. If you have a hard time defining exactly what it is that you do, a lot of times you can frame it by comparing it to a brand that your prospects are probably already familiar with. So in many different ways, this idea of providing reference points is a way that you can move people along or move people into new territory for them by constantly pointing at territory they are familiar with and providing that comparison and that point of reference, okay? So those are the 4 conversion triggers that we're going to talk about today. That was anticipation, which is something that you see very often in product launches. The idea of status and feeling significant compared to those around you. The idea of social proof, which is the idea that we operate in a pack. So when you can show that other people have done what you want your prospect to do, they're more likely to make that move. And then lastly is the reference point, which is the idea that you can make the unknown much more desirable to people by comparing it to the things that they do know, okay? So with that in mind, we will probably wrap up this series in the next episode. That will be part 4 of this whole conversion triggers series. In the meantime, I want to let you know about another feature that I've just put together inside the Blog Monetization Lab. It's still a work in progress, but kind of like I'm doing with the brand new Roadmap 2.0, I'm releasing it and I'm going to be working on it in public. But this is the glossary. See, what I know from teaching for many, many years now is that one of the things that really often get in the way of progress is the simple terminology that we use. Words that people just throw out there, assume you already know, and you're like, I don't even know what they're talking about. And the result of that is typically going to be that you kind of alienate yourselves from the topic and you write it off and you take off because we don't like to deal with the unknown. Okay? And so for that reason, I'm creating a brand new glossary inside the Blog Monetization Lab where I'm throwing different technical and marketing terminologies that you see out there, and I'm giving a plain English definition to them because I do not want anybody to be in the dark with not only my training, but anybody else's training because nobody's defining the words properly. I'm putting an end to that with the new lab glossary. So to have access to that and all the other new things that I'm working on to make your life easier, head on over to blogmonetizationlab.com. Okay, I'll see you next time on part 4 of our Conversion Triggers series. See you then. Thanks for listening to this episode of Coffee Break Blogging. If you like what you heard here today, we have something awesome we'd love to send you. It's called the Blog Conversion Guide, and it has 9 tweaks you can make to your blog in order to increase your conversion rate to get more opt-ins and sales. As one of our listeners, we'd love to give you access to this guide absolutely free. You can get your copy right now by going to coffeebreakblogging.com. Again, go to coffeebreakblogging.com to get your copy, and we'll see you next time.